Oh, yes, it sounds nice enough and spiritual to boot. But, friend, surrender isn't always such a tidy bundle. Often it is a package seething with painful feelings like anger, rage, and deep sadness, which are eventually followed by release and peace. As we surrender, we experience our frustration and anger at God, at other people, at ourselves, and at life. Oftentimes, saying, Yes, Lord, simply opens the door to the grieving process. We suddenly find ourselves at the very core of our pain and sadness, the heavy emotional burden inside that has to be released before we can feel right again. By allowing ourselves to admit the grief through that front door of surrender, healing can slip in, quiet and unannounced, through the back door. Willpower isn't the key, surrender is. For many years, I've heard men and women from all walks of life say things like this: I invested too many years of my life trying to make people be what they don't want to be or do what they don't want to do. I have driven them and myself crazy in the process. I spent my childhood trying to make an angry father who didn't love himself be a normal person who loved me. I have spent years trying to make emotionally unavailable people be emotionally present for me. I've poured my life into trying to make unhappy family members happy, even though they don't seem interested in making the slightest effort. I have given the last 25 years of my life trying to make my alcoholic husband stop drinking. When they are all saying in what they are all saying in different words is something like this: I have spent much of my life desperately and vainly trying to do the impossible and feeling like a dismal failure when I couldn't. It's like planting carrot seeds and trying passionately, creatively, and desperately to make those little plants grow price tomatoes and feel defeated when it doesn't work. By surrendering, we gain the presence of mind to stop wasting time and energy trying to change and control that which we cannot change or control. Surrender gives us permission to stop trying to do the impossible and to focus on what is possible. I wish I could say that surrender is a one-time event. It's not. Yielding to the Lord is a continual, daily, sometimes hourly process. God and I were in a wrestling match in that hotel room, round one, but down the road, unbeknownst to me, were many more rounds to go. Have you ever been in a wrestling match with God? Jacob was. Remember him? He was the first class conman who lied to his blind aged father and twice betrayed his own brother, eventually stealing Esau's very inheritance, right as the oldest son, the most precious thing the man possessed. The name Jacob means crafty deceiver, and he tried hard to live up to his name. Ah, but there came a night, do you remember, when the son of Isaac slipped through the ropes in the darkness and climbed into the ring with the angel of the Lord. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he couldn't overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, Let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, What's your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. Jacob said, Please tell me your name. But he replied, Why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Genesis 32:24 to 31. The text says that God allowed Jacob to prevail, but before he let his man up off the mat, he also dislocated Jacob's hip. Let me assure you, friend, a dislocated hip isn't a hangnail or a bad hair day. It's extremely painful. And through all years of life that followed, it constantly reminded Jacob that he was not to depend on his own strength. He was to rely entirely on God. God loves us so much that He will wrestle with us. He is not the Burger King. You're not going to have it your way all the time. That night when Jacob was alone in the dark, he wrestled with God, and God blessed his life. In spite of his seedy track record, in spite of his scheming, manipulative, and deceitful ways, God chose to open heavens, great storehouses, and pour his favor out upon Jacob. Why does that encourage me so much? From that point on, Jacob knew his well being was dependent on God's help, God's guidance, and God's blessing, not his own devices. It's a lesson worth going to the mat for, or even the floor of an elevator.